On today's episode, we run down the postseason injury report, why the Dallas Stars cannot allow Thomas Harley to walk this summer, and more coming up next on Locked On Stars.
You're Locked On Stars, your daily podcast on the Dallas Stars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, Stars fans. Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Stars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. It's a pleasure to be with you. I'm Joey Erickson, former producer, 105 Through the Fan. Please be sure to subscribe. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube. And as always, thank you so much for making us a part of your day and making us your first listen. Happy Monday, Stars fans. Today marks the beginning of the next few weeks of excitement in the NHL offseason. The NHL draft is 4 days away. Free agency takes place next week. So now it's time to bask in all the glory that is the NHL offseason in the next 15 to 30 days. What moves are the Dallas Stars going to make? But today we have an injury report. Finally, the Dallas Stars made a late news dump on Friday of last week with some injury updates. So we'll touch on that. We'll also need to have a discussion about Thomas Harley. He's a restricted free agent and the Stars cannot let him walk this summer. It would be a monumental mistake. And we're going to have some fun today at the end of today's episode. Let me know what your favorite broadcasts within the NHL are. Obviously, I think we're rather spoiled here in Dallas with Josh Bogorod and Daryl Ray, but are there any other favorite broadcasts that you have within the National Hockey League? Please let me know in the comment section below. So let's jump into that injury report we've all been waiting for. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As playoffs wind down, the sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. One of the pastimes, I guess you could say, in the NHL is always the injury report that comes out a few days, a week later after the postseason for that respective team has wrapped up. And you can see what each player was dealing with during each of these postseason runs. The NHL is pretty notorious for keeping it tightly sealed, the injuries that players are dealing with, even in the regular season. It has gotten better over the years, and I think betting has influenced that to some degree, but in the postseason, it is zilch. You do not know anything, and we didn't know anything about Jani Hakanpaa, who seemed to be day-to-day for more than 80 days of this past season when he went down in February. And of course, he did not make an appearance in the postseason this year. So you can kind of get a feel for what guys were going through. And this comes via Mike Heika. Jim Nill gave an injury update on Friday afternoon, as I mentioned. It said there are no surgeries needed this summer, so that is a good sign. Jani Hakanpaa had an arthroscopic procedure on his knee and was not able to return in time, but he doesn't need anything else. So there you go. There's a lower body injury for Hakanpaa. It was a injury, so he had arthroscopic procedure, but did not need anything else. Chris Tanev had an injured tendon and will recover from that. We heard that from Tanev himself, where he thought it could have been worse, but he does not need surgery. So that's still a good sign if you want to re-sign Tanev, which I think we're all in agreement. Yes, get Tanev back into the building. He also mentioned Tyler Seguin played through some lower body pain, but doesn't need any procedures. That's no surprise. He took a stint off in February, and he was listed as a lower body injury there and took a stint off, and he just needed some rest. But we all know Tyler is playing with some sort of pain for most of his career in the last few seasons, and it's something you just have to expect, and it's something that he'll be dealing with for the majority of his career at this point, which is unfortunate, but boy, did he have a great season either way. And he persevered, and he was one of the better stars in the Stanley Cup playoffs just about a month ago. He was fantastic. Neil said he needs the time off, but he'll be fine, which is a good sign. Or guys banged up, yes, but nothing major that has to be taken care of. So we were very fortunate. When it came to Roope, he said it was a broken finger, no further procedure needed. We thought it may have been a wrist. I thought it was a wrist. It was some sort of upper body injury. He took that cross check from McKinnon in game 4, I believe. It could have been game 3 of that Colorado series. They all blur together now as we look back on it, but that could have been really dangerous. I think the Stars were quite lucky. He even came back for that series against Edmonton, and he had a huge game 3. I can't imagine the pain he was dealing with. The finger has to be probably one of the worst, especially when you talk about trying to hold your stick, and every battle you engage in, just every time you're holding the stick, I would think that is a really, really uncomfortable injury for Roope Hintz, which obviously speaks to some of his issues throughout the playoffs. I'm curious if he had an injury in that Vegas series, because the first 3 to 4 games of that series, he just did not look 100%. And I speculated that maybe it was a lower body injury, and then he started off really good against Colorado. Maybe it was just his form. Maybe he just wasn't playing up to his standards, but it looked like there was something up with him, and maybe they'll speak a bit more to that as the weeks come on. But if right now it was just the broken finger that we know of, still that probably isn't very comfortable when you think about having to hold the stick, and just the amount of times that the finger probably gets some sort of pressure on it or gets ran into. Anything can happen, especially in the postseason, especially when you're trying to get to those dirty areas. Like, you're going to put some pressure on it, and it's definitely going to see its fair share of bruises or hits or collisions, I guess I should say. So a broken finger for Roope Hintz. He said a lot of guys were banged up, but they were very fortunate, and a good sign that nobody needs any surgery here this summer. I don't think Jani Hakanpaa is going to be a top priority for Dallas, and maybe it is a good time to kind of segue into what Dallas has to do here on the back end, especially because right now they have 3 players under contract. That's Miro Heiskanen, Esa Lindell, and Ryan Suter. Hakanpaa, of course, is a UFA. Tanev is a UFA. Priority number 1 is trying to get back Tanev. I think you can live with letting Jani Hakanpaa walk as long as you don't let Thomas Harley walk as well. I think there's a caveat there, but Hakanpaa at 32, he'll be 33 next season. His game just does not lend to the style that Dallas wants to play, and he's a great penalty killer. He adds some size on the back end, but I think you can make up for that for somebody like Liam Bichsel. And is he going to be able to make the jump at 20 years old to be an everyday NHL player? I don't know, but it doesn't hurt to see, and it wouldn't also hurt to put somebody in a position like Nils Lundkvist to play every day if Hakanpaa does not return. That wouldn't be the worst case scenario. Lundkvist gets another season, perhaps, to prove that he can be a mainstay in the lineup. If you get him back, he's a restricted free agent. He's also arbitration eligible. So how does that play into the Stars' thinking when it comes to Hakanpaa when he did have this injury? Man, guys like him who are big and already struggle with mobility, do you really want to be hooked on to Hakanpaa next year or for the next few years? So we'll see how that all takes shape in the next few weeks with free agency right around the corner. But all things told, seems like a pretty good postseason injury report. Tyler Seguin dealing with pain, as I mentioned. One more rundown for you. Chris Tanev had an injured tendon, but will recover from that. And he also mentioned he would not need surgery, just needs some time off. It'll be good for Seguin to get a lot of time off. The healthier he is, the better. I think you're going to have to start looking at a player like Seguin where he's going to need some games off next season, or at least in the last 3 years of his contract. I think it would really help if he takes a day off here and there, takes a day off on the back-to-backs, give him some time to rest and recover, because you need him at his best in the postseason. And frankly, he was at his best this year in the Stanley Cup playoffs, and that was playing with some pain. He was excellent. He was consistent and just a really, really strong player for Dallas. More than you can say about some others that should have had a bigger impact when you look back at it at this point. I think Dallas needs to take that into account. And I know that may be really hard to sell to Seguin. No, if I'm good enough to play, I'm going to play. But when you're looking into March and April, even when you have your postseason seeded, locked up, and I know they're trying to push for home ice advantage, hasn't really worked out with you losing a bunch of game ones to begin series. But hey, like let's take a day off here and there, and it doesn't need to be 15 games, right? I'm not asking for that, but maybe if not, maybe suiting up for all 82 isn't in your best interest. Maybe you take 5 to 10 games off. And of course you can stack that based off of how many back-to-backs you have. If you have 2 in a month, maybe you just take 1 back-to-back off. If there's 2 back-to-backs in March, maybe take both of those off just to kind of give your body some time to recover and to at least be as fresh as possible. Because look, everybody's going to be playing with bumps and bruises. Nobody's going to be healthy in the postseason for the most part. That's just the nature of hockey. It's a violent game, and you're gonna have to deal with some injuries here and there. So I wonder if that's something that they can try to be a bit better at next year, a bit more conscious of when you're talking about the postseason and the bigger picture, because we saw it. They ran out of gas. It was a big factor in why they lost to Edmonton. They just looked tired. So if you can do yourself some favors in the regular season, I think they need to definitely work on that, or at least try it, right? So there is a quick rundown, though, of your injury report. We've been waiting for it for a while, and they just dump it on a Friday afternoon. So wanted to make sure any of you that did not see that, there you go. Okay, now let's really talk about Thomas Harley. We've been spending a lot of time on Tanev and Duchesne for the right reasons, but Thomas Harley is another really important decision Dallas has to make. And there was an article that spurred this conversation on, and I'll tell you about it in just a moment. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much, I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games, and the sports aren't sporting like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. I'll tell you what, I love golf, and the major championships are very exciting. The U.S. Open a couple of weeks ago. We have the British Open at Royal Troon next month. I'm going to sprinkle some money on my favorite golfers next month. Plus, you can sprinkle some money on Major League Baseball every single day. You have games every single night. Make some money this summer. So head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. So Thomas Harley is a 22-year-old restricted free agent this summer. And the reason we probably haven't had this conversation already this offseason is because I've been keeping a main fixture on Chris Tanev and Matt Duchesne for obvious reasons. But look, Thomas Harley is really important to the Stars' success. And I have some very strong opinions on the matter. And the reason I wanted to address this was because The Athletic put out an article titled "The Top 10 NHL Players That You Could Offer an Offer Sheet to This Off Season." And it got me thinking, yeah, Thomas Harley could walk this summer, and I'm here to tell you why that can't happen. That will be an absolute travesty. And I've already mentioned the Stars only have 3 defensemen under contract here heading into next year. So they need to find a way to get Harley to stay here for whatever length of term that is going to be. And this is a really strong statement I'm going to make, but I think it's necessary. I think the Dallas Stars need to make Thomas Harley a real priority. And by how much, I mean, if you have to sign Thomas Harley to a deal that keeps him around at the expense of losing Chris Tanev, I think you have to do it. I think you have to do it. Harley is just 22 years old. He is going to be a core piece in your future here in Dallas. And as much as I love Tanev, you cannot give up on this 22-year-old with what he showed you this past season. He was the Dallas Stars, I think, most improved player. Wyatt has an argument, but I gave him MVP, so we can let Thomas Harley have most improved player. Now, how do they get him to stay is another question. I think ideally for Dallas, and in terms of the cap space, it works better if Harley can sign a bridge deal. And I'm thinking 4 years that signs him till the end of 27-28. Now, the kicker is that means Miro and Harley will both be up for a deal that next season. So that obviously comes into play. You can, of course, sign Harley long-term. And as it mentions in this article specifically, it says, if a general manager wants to be bold and take a leap, they could offer Harley something closer to his market value in the $7 million range. That would come at a cost of a first, second, and third round pick, but it would be a high-end defenseman in the prime for years to come. And this is, of course, revolving around the offer sheet. It said Harley is coming off an excellent regular season. He stepped up when Miro went down, and the team's number one returned, of course, and Heiskanen and Harley formed a dynamic top pairing that thrived on both ends of the ice. I think the caveat as well is you would like Harley and Heiskanen to be split up because you want Miro on his strong side and you would like Harley on his strong side. And that's why it's really intriguing if you bring Tanev back and also grab another right-handed defenseman, whether that's via free agency, whether that's via trade here in the next couple of months as well. That would be ideal, but it is important that Thomas Harley is with the Dallas Stars. And as much as it pains me to say it, if that comes at the cost of losing out on someone like Chris Tanev, I think you have to take it. Would love to hear your thoughts on it. Would you be okay with giving up Tanev if it meant you have to give Harley a bit more? You have to sign him somewhere $6.5, $7 million, whether that's 7 and 8 year deal, or maybe 6 max, 6 to 8 years. Look, he's not going to get more than Miro, of course. At this point in time, I think the best and cost-effective option for Dallas is a bridge deal somewhere like Robertson, where he got 4 years, and you can deal with an extension later on down the line. But I'm really high on Harley. I really am. I know his postseason goal scoring and his point production came down, but look, he's 22. That's where I'm trying to get at. He's so young. Man, Jim Nill cannot allow him to walk. You will be kicking yourself for years to come to allow someone like Thomas Harley to not be in victory green. I felt like we needed to have this conversation after seeing this article and why it's really important Harley stays, even if that comes at the expense of Chris Tanev. As much as I like him, he's 34 years of age. He'll be 35 next season. and he's at the tail end of his career. You're talking about Harley, who hasn't even necessarily entered his prime as of yet. He is still a greenhorn in terms of games played in the National Hockey League as a defenseman. And yeah, you have to invest in that. So just wanted to put that out into the universe. I will predict, I think they are going to re-sign him. So I'm not going to overreact just yet. But after seeing that, I was like, okay, it's a perfect time to have this conversation. Yeah, Harley has to be around because your defensive core outside of your top four is not the best. And really, we're talking about top three right now with Miro, Essa, and Suter. So that's just not good enough. Even if you did re-sign Hakanpaa and Niels, you need to fill some holes there. So there we go. There's our little discussion on Thomas Harley. All righty. Let's move on. Let's have some fun. I'm curious to hear your favorite broadcasts around the league. Obviously, we get to hear Daryl Ray and Josh Bogorod a ton, night in and night out on Bally Sports. Are there some others that you want to show some love to? Because The Athletic also had an article. This was a while back, and it just didn't feel like the right time to have the conversation, or at least bring it up with the playoffs and everything. But now's the perfect time. There was some broadcast rankings. I'll tell you where the Stars broadcast fell in this year's rankings, and we'll do that in just a moment. Today's episode of Locked On Stars is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust skits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride or your money back, because you're burning rubber, not cash, with eBay Motors. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. So we may all be biased here on Locked On Stars, but we do love our Dallas Stars broadcast crew, which consists of Josh Bogorod and Daryl the Razor Ray. The Athletic put out an article a couple months ago just ranking the 32 NHL team broadcast crews, and the Dallas Stars come in at number 3 on this year's rankings. And it has a few fun notes and a few great tidbits, along with Daryl Ray and his unique euphemisms and mastodonic vocabulary. It also shows some love to Josh Bogorod. A respondent said he is phenomenal, crisp play-by-play, just enough homerism, tone matches the play, just enough announcer voice. He's developed into a world-class broadcaster in the last few years, and I could not co-sign that enough. They are very, very exciting to listen to, and we are spoiled as Stars fans to get to listen to them night in and night out. But that got me thinking, are there any broadcast crews around the NHL that you enjoy listening to? I have ESPN Plus, and sometimes I just throw on a game randomly and you start to listen in. You're like, oh yeah, I like them. I don't mind them at all. Some you're completely out on. So I would love to hear your feedback. Please let me know in the comment section below. The two teams that came in ahead of the Dallas Stars, the Detroit Red Wings, who have had a world-class crew, Ken Daniels and Mickey Redmond, for years, and Seattle came in at number 1. They have John Forsland, who is an excellent play-by-play broadcaster. He's also on the national broadcast. You hear him on TNT all the time. Eddie Olczyk and JT Brown is also a part of that broadcast crew. So show some love to the top 3 broadcasts within the NHL. I will say this. I have an affinity for the LA Kings broadcast crew. Alex Foss does the play-by-play there. I just love his voice. I found multiple times this season just turning on Kings games and listen, like, man, this guy is awesome. It gives me an old school feel for some reason. Like it's in the 80s, just this deep voice, very pleasant to listen to. So if you ever get a chance, turn on a Kings game. I've listened to a lot of Minnesota Wild games in recent years, just from being in Minnesota and catching some of those games. Not in love with Anthony LaPanta. He's a bit homerish for my liking, but it's not egregious. I think in Minnesota as well, that's just sort of the niche market, or just it's kind of almost a characteristic of a lot of their play-by-play broadcasters. You look at Paul Allen in Minnesota, he is like the highest level of homerism. I love him too. Like that's a fun listen. It absolutely is. I think it touches great on it here in the article. It says just a touch of homerism. I think that's why we really enjoy listening to Josh and Razor. They tell it like it is more often than not. They don't sugarcoat a ton of things. And Daryl does it in a way that is just so succinct and beautiful, even if it is coming at a slight at the Stars, perhaps. You wouldn't even know with the way he he uses his vocabulary. So it's a lot of fun to listen to those two. So let me know if there are any broadcast crews that you enjoy listening to. On a national scale, the broadcasters for ESPN and TNT don't make me disgusted, is what I say. I actually quite enjoy most of them. I think my biggest gripes with both TNT or ESPN would be the overall just coverage of the game, not necessarily their broadcasters. There are some that I don't necessarily love, but none of them make me repulse, if that's an elegant way of putting it. It's definitely a hard job. So nothing against any of their broadcasts. I think more of my gripe comes with some of the coverage and other things more than the broadcasters themselves. So if you have any sort of takes on that, please feel free. I'm sure many of you have gripes with ESPN and TNT on how they cover the National Hockey League sometimes. But there you go. The Dallas Stars came in at number 3 this year on the top NHL broadcasts. Alrighty, that wraps up today's episode of Locked On Stars. Thought we got a lot done on today's episode. Talked some injury reports, Thomas Harley, and the Stars gotta fix this Steve problem, don't they? They have some work ahead of them, but it's going to be a fun week. It definitely is. We have some draft content coming out this week. Supposed to have another guest on here this week as well, so be out on the lookout for that later this week. Plenty of good stuff coming your way. This is the excitement of the NHL offseason. So hop on board to Locked On Stars, like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Never miss an episode. Enjoy your Monday, and we'll see you tomorrow. So long, Stars fans.